Hi everyone, and it's a very warm welcome to the start of a brand new season here on the fourth official. And to get us in the mood for the big kickoff, I'm joined by not one but two guests as we preview the start of a new season and a trip to Tynecastle on Saturday lunchtime to begin the brand new Premiership season. Joining me, Gary Morris, who will be your host all the way through the season again here on the fourth official, is my good friend, first of all, Mitch, who you will be very familiar with over the course of a lot of our summer content. Warm welcome, Mitch.
Pleasure as always to be back, and nice to have the gaffer back in charge as well. Now you've stopped sunning yourself.
Absolutely, you can see get the tan and everything, so no, it's all good. Also joining myself and Mitch, it wouldn't be the summer transfer window without a loan signing or two. And joining us once again from the brilliant Ibrox Channel podcast is our good friend Andrew. Welcome back, mate.
Oh, very good to be. Thank you ever so much for having us, guys, and good to see you, Mitch.
And you, Andrew?
Okay, so let's get straight into it, lads. And I think it's fair to say that it hasn't been the quietest of summers for the club. Quite a bit of discontent and noise around the place. And I don't know about you two, but I think the best way to subside that noise is by getting the team back on the pitch and winning football games. And it doesn't come any bigger than what we've got coming up for us in August with some very big league games, starting, of course, at Tynecastle on Saturday. Let's get into that first of all in terms of how we expect the team to line up, Mitch. Now, Philip Clement and Niels Coppin have been very busy over the course of the summer in terms of bringing in 8 new faces to the squad. Not all, of course, will be involved at the weekend, but we certainly would expect that Connor Barron, certainly who's been our brightest spark, probably during pre-season, will pick up alongside Mo Diamande in the heart of the midfield. Outside of that, any other of the new faces do you expect to see pitched in from the start at Tynecastle?
I do feel that there's a good chance that Robin comes in. Whether or not that be from the start or whether that be jumping on for the last half hour, I think some of that will come down to probably what training looks like over the course of tomorrow and how comfortable everybody can get, as quickly with each other. But I do think will Clement probably go for the old tried and trusted of Suter and Davies. I would probably expect so. But I would probably be surprised though if Tierney doesn't start on the wing. I would probably be fairly surprised. I think there's a lot of ambiguity at the moment about Scott Wright's position, and also I think maybe just given that little bit of experience there for Ross McCausland to lean on over the course of this season, probably seems like this is much more of his scholarship year as opposed to the crash bang wallop graduate year that he had last year.
Yep. Across the summer, Andrew, obviously with the pre-season friendlies, some of the younger lads, particularly I feel Yefty at left back, has looked pretty raw. So I'm firmly expecting Ridvan Yilmaz to be established as the first choice at left back. And then that really brings us to the big question around what we do with the captain. Now, James Tavernier has been subject to an awful lot of interest over the course of the summer from clubs in Turkey, Besiktas and Trabzonspor. Certainly the loudest with that. And the noise regarding Saudi Arabian interest certainly hasn't gone away. And we've reported a lot on our YouTube channel and on Patreon over the course of the last few weeks regarding that. Obviously, Tav played at Birmingham and against Union Berlin at the weekend. Rumours around the fitness regarding Dujon Sterling, who missed the game in Berlin with a minor thigh problem, it was said to believe. But if Tav's fit, Tav plays, doesn't he, if he's still in the country?
Yeah, he's not being left out that team. As much as It probably, he is at the end of his Rangers chapter. I think it's probably the best way to say it. He's still going to be the captain. If he plays, he's going to be the captain. I think what hasn't helped in the summer, obviously there has been interest in Tav, and it's understandable for his attacking output. And especially when you can possibly tempt him away to somewhere like Saudi, where there's a lot of money involved. But I do feel that he will play. Now, I don't think it's helped that he's been injured, because obviously that puts more of a question mark, especially in the summer, because he doesn't really get injured, does he? But when we didn't see him lining up in some of them games, you think, is this like a Todd Cadwell situation now? But yeah, no, Tav will start. And his defensive qualities do need to improve. Didn't really see too much that was great at Birmingham, but he definitely will start. I can see that, especially with there being no other real right back option unless Sterling can get back in there.
Yeah, and certainly we're recording this before the pre-match press conferences on Friday, so no news regarding Sterling's availability or not. But yeah, I would imagine that if he is fit and ready to go, then he may well be an option for the middle of the park. And it would be interesting, given the fact that Tynecastle away, one of the more trickier venues in the league, whether you might want to go with a bit more of a kind of flat three in the midfield area with Barron, with Diamandi, and maybe Sterling if he's fit, or do we continue with Tom Lawrence in that area? Certainly not as mobile, but gives us certainly more of a goal threat than certainly Dujon Sterling will do. Got to Berlin at the weekend, but I think the biggest thing with Tom Lawrence, Mitch, will be fitness and whether or not he can play the press and be as useful out of possession than he certainly is when Rangers have got the ball and are on the attack.
I think the Tom Lawrence conundrum, let's call it. Tom Lawrence has had a pretty solid pre-season. He's had a really sterling pre-season. He's looked sharp, he's looked bright. But he also seems to have learned over the summer how to adapt his game to where he is physically as a player now. He'll hold his run back a little bit. He knows he's not got the legs to make a 40-yard dash up the pitch, but he'll make sure that when the ball's moving in front of him, he's following it pretty well. Something you and I spoke of last season is, I would say pound for pound, Tom Lawrence is probably still the best striker of a football, within, I would say, probably most divisions up and down the country. And I think Tom Lawrence for me would start in that midfield, just given form over pre-season, given how everybody's lined up. I do think the Tav question boils down to, I could see a position where Sterling starts at right back, because I think for me this is the season that he's got to nail that position down as his position and not be the ultimate utility man that's everywhere over the park again. I think realistically, if Tav stays this season, which again there's still a few weeks left of the window, so we never say never, I think Sterling starts at right back for me, and I think Philip Clement can base that any way that he would like to, whether he says that's because Tav's a couple of weeks behind the rest of the group fitness-wise, or he says, look, he's not quite ready to start the games, which is fine. But I think my midfield three would probably be Connor Barron, Diamandi, and Tom Lawrence. That would be how I would start it. And I think with Sterling's raw sheer athleticism over Tavernier now, given his extra physical capabilities, I think it makes much more sense to put him in the right back option there, given the pace that Hearts come at you with.
Yep, obviously today Rangers announcing the signing of FC20's captain Robin Proper, who comes in on what we believe is a long-term contract. No indication of the fee that's been made has been made public to the kind of wider community, Andrew, but I'm hearing it's in the region of around about £2.5 to £3 million that's been paid for Robin Proper. And now he is 30 years of age, so he absolutely fits that profile in terms of an experienced head, someone that's got leadership capabilities, someone that can lead from the back, and certainly with Connor Goldson's absence now, having moved to Aris Limassol, Rangers badly needed some reinforcements in the defensive area, because in pre-season John Souttar and Ben Davies have looked far from convincing as a partnership. And aside from Leon Balogun, who is an experienced pair of hands, but you probably don't want to see Leon Balogun playing too many games across this season if we want it to be a successful one. Proper comes in as someone who was massively needed. The question for me is, with young Clinton and Shala, as someone who needs to be developed, and we're certainly not going to see him at the weekend, do we still need one more? And probably that will be the case if Ben Davies has moved on.
I do think we need one more. I think just at the minute that looking at performances last season, obviously Souttar and Davies, there wasn't too many players in the team that really excelled, was there? And I think, our defence went from under Clement when he came in, was the best in the league. I think we only conceded a handful of goals, and then it kind of all came tumbling down after January. What I like about Proper is the fact that he was a captain of a team that finished third in the Dutch league last season, made 39 games, so he's not somebody that's spent half the season injured. So I don't know what the club doctors are going to do there. They'll be a bit bored, but 30 years old, he's got that little bit more experience. I think you do need that, especially if you are bringing in a players of a much younger age. I know football's a little bit different now in that respect. There's a lot of younger players you'd class as younger that are the experienced ones now. But, I think it's the right option. Personally, I do like Souttar, but there's so many times he gets caught kind of under the ball. I think Davies has sometimes had a bit of a raw deal, but still not that kind of quality centre-back that you're looking for. Don't get me wrong.
I think the thing for me for Ben Davies is that he never looks overly convincing with what he does. So even when he's having a good game, it never looks as if he's having a good game, because there isn't that level of confidence in Ben Davies because of what we've seen. He's just never been able to really kind of nail down a place and be the guy that we brought him in to be, certainly when we paid Liverpool £4 million for him to replace Calvin Bassey, and certainly it wasn't a like for like replacement, and certainly the indications that young Inshallah and from AC Milan could turn out to be that type of kind of raw big unit of a centre back that may well be able to play alongside Proper. Now, from what we're hearing, Proper can play either side of the back. He kind of can play on the left or on the right, which means I think there is a place up for grabs at the moment. I would probably expect if he comes straight in, it would probably be alongside Souttar rather than alongside Davies. But we'll need to watch and see what happens, whether or not Phil throws him straight in or not. I don't know. But we've paid the money to get him in, and with Dynamo Kiev on the horizon, I think that the quicker we can get him on the pitch, the better it really is for everyone, because there's not a huge turnaround time between the game on Saturday and then the trip to Poland to play Kiev next midweek.
I think the big question for me surrounding the centre-back pairing is, a lot of times, and I've touched on it obviously with yourself, Gary, many times last season, where I would like my theory to be proven right, where John Souttar was covering for the physical decline of Connor Goldson. And that's why sometimes he was maybe guilty of overplaying, trying to play a position and a half to make up for the physical decline in Connor Goldson beside him. That's not a knock on Connor. I think everybody with a pair of eyes could see the legs had gone at this level. So now, the question for me is, can John Souttar as a player kick on and make that? Now you've got another solid set of hands beside you, and a player that's more than physically competent, physically capable. He barks off his line. Does that then mean that working theory that last season that maybe Connor was the problem, does that get proven right? Or does that get proven that actually maybe both of them were two peas in a pod?
Yeah. I think as well, we've seen John Souttar, particularly in his Hearts days, better in a 3 than in a 2. And I think in a two-man defence, he found himself exposed at times, and whilst he can be very good on the ball, Scottish football requires you to be good defensively, and yeah, but I think that there's still a little bit of work to be done there. But I would be quite happy, I think, if we go Suter and Proper at the weekend. I think we're all keen to see what the big handsome Dutchman can bring to the table. So we'll watch that with great interest. You spoke earlier, Mitch, about the conundrums and the kind of wide areas. Obviously, Vaclav Černý. Apologies for any Czechia listeners that are watching that if I've butchered that pronunciation. I'm sure there'll be plenty in the Scottish media that will struggle with it potentially, but we expect him to be involved on Saturday, probably from the right-hand side. On the left, I think that's a shirt that's up for grabs. I think Oscar Cortez has looked quite raw in pre-season, obviously coming back from quite a significant injury last season, Andrew. Obviously, Rabbi Matondo, another player who has been in and out plenty with his own injury problems. And then obviously we've got Scott Wright as well, who's got more lives than the kind of average top cat out there. But he is a player that I think Phil Clement likes because he will take guidance and he will do what he's told. And whilst he maybe doesn't have the quite end product of maybe the other two options, he might be seen as someone that is maybe a little bit more safer. I think Cortez, particularly defensively in the friendlies, linking up with Hefty, lost his man an awful lot. And I think given Hearts, and we'll talk about them shortly, that they've recruited really, really sensibly during the summer. They're going to fancy it at the weekend. Full house at Tynecastle, season opener live on the TV. So I just wonder whether or not, even if we do start with Černý, whether Scott Wright will also play, just because the manager trusts in him to do the dirty stuff a little bit easier than maybe we get from Rabi or from Oscar Cortez.
Yeah, no, it is definitely an interesting one because there are times where you see Scott Wright come on and you'll go past 3 or 4 people and it will just be that kind of final little end ball. But you'll look and go, he's actually done more than what some of the other players have done on the pitch today. So that's that kind of thing. That's that weird middle ground we have with Scott Wright. I loved the look of Cortez. I'm so glad we have managed to secure Cortez. I think he predominantly played out on the right at his previous clubs, but he's very good on the left and, obviously can use his other foot and cut in. Obviously, he's had a lengthy layoff with his injury. He's probably still struggling to get up to speed. It's a difficult one. I think Scott Wright is possibly a safe option to start with. I think that would kind of make sense, but it's a little bit of a headache because I think we've definitely improved in certain areas in the middle. But I think Scott Wright, the man that looked like he was away last summer, he's still here, and I'm sure we'll utilise him at Hampden because that's where he excels.
And finally, talking positionally, we're going to come to you on this one, Mitch. Your man Cyril at the top end of the park. 2 goals in Germany at the weekend. Certainly the best he's looked in pre-season. Another one who, over the course of the summer, has looked as if there may have been interest in him at times. He's still here, but he's still saying all the right things about wanting to remain in Glasgow. But whether that remains the case if Danilo is the main man and Cyril Dessers is relegated to a supporting role, I'm not quite so sure. Now, Danilo has looked way off it in pre-season, again, coming back from a really serious injury last year. I don't think anyone expects Danilo to be able to play 90 minutes 3 times a week for a good while yet. And we're obviously still to see the new signing Moroccan Hamza Igaman, who's been on individual training plans so far and hasn't been involved in any of the matchday squads so far. So it's Dessers' shirt at the moment. We're all expecting to see Dessers at the weekend with Danilo as he's back up on the bench as he builds up. But I think it's a big season for Cyril because 22 goals last season, whilst not really maintaining the confidence of a lot of the support. I know he's your boy, Mitch, but
always
can he do it again this year when last year he was the only option we had? This year, I think it looks as if we're going to have at least a couple more in there once Igamani and Danilo get up to speed.
I think to go into now, at the risk of sounding like a proud mother when it comes to Dessers, or an over-enthusiastic wife, I put a sensible measured head on it. And I'll touch on the point there that last season when Dessers came to the club knew he was nursing the back injury before he came here, and he never got a proper pre-season under his belt, and we knew he was never going to be up to speed until November, December time at best. And it was very easy to ridicule the player that was there all the time, week in, week out, with nobody there to interlink and nobody else to take the flat from. When you go through those 3-4 games where he's looking a little bit iffy and he's looking a bit tired and a bit leggy, he didn't have a partner to come in and say, do you know what, I've got you this game, I'll go and step in. And I think having a better support cast around him with a fully fit Danilo, which I think realistically we probably won't see until mid-September, being completely frank about it. He's had a great pre-season in terms of minutes in the legs, but he's also still come off the back of nearly a 7-month, 8-month injury layoff. He is going to take some time. He's going to be pretty raw. And for this moment in time, Cyril Dessers, this is Cyril's world that we're all just living in. What we need him to know is, what we need from Cyril Dessers is, I expect that he will go 30 goals this season. Very bold prediction, I'm aware. But what we need him to do is less of making the hard things look easy and the easy things look difficult. We need a little bit more meet it in the middle. Just be a little bit more consistent. But also, I think having the chance to build relationships with a solid, consistent team around him and not teammates dropping like flies through injuries throughout the season. I think that's where we're going to start to see Cyril Dessers really thrive in that big man role. I mentioned last season the best way to describe Cyril Dessers is like a modern day John Carew. He'll go up top, he'll do the dirty work, he'll drag defenders around. Give him a greedy pal to do the finishing.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly something that we're looking at in terms of options, and I think that's where Egeman, who again we've not seen any of, and we don't know how quickly he'll adapt to life in Scottish football. Hopefully it'll be quickly, but yeah, that's another one where he's not going to be good to go, I think, for the weekend, and we just need to hope that some of the wide players can chip in with goals, because it's been an area, Andrew, that Abdullah Sima last season aside, Rangers wide players don't score enough goals, and that's where the over-reliance on your Dessers, your James Taverniers comes from. We need more goals coming from midfield and from wide areas, and that's where hopefully the signing of Czerny is going to be massively important, because if he can repeat where he was very, very good when he was in Holland, playing alongside Danilo, let's be honest, then that's going to be a massive weight off Cyril's shoulders, but also spread that load around more people in the team, and that less reliance on one or two heads to carry us through games.
Yeah, no, I do agree. It's we have relied on Tavernier for far too long in an attacking sense. It's great his output, but he's clearly not got the legs for that now. Under Gio, Gio managed to get quite a good. I can't think of the exact word, but he pressed Tav up a little bit higher in a lot of games, especially in Europe, and he was always ghosted in at that back post, and he was fantastic at that. But we have strikers, we have attacking midfielders, the goals need to come from there. You look at, I remember reading into something at Feyenoord around Danilo, and actually the Feyenoord fans were looking forward to, because there was rumours of Dessers and Danilo being up front for them, and they were loving that idea. Obviously a kind of different system. Danilo, yeah, well, do you know what? You've got to hand it to Dessers. He's taken a lot of flack, a lot of stick. He's still got that smile on his face. Are you confident with him on a one-on-one? 50-50. If the ball comes in and it's a header, he's scoring it. The things where he doesn't have to think about it. He is a very instinctive finisher. He's very good off the ball, and we have to rely on him at the minute. He is our best striker that we've got at the club at the minute. Danilo still has to I know he's had a long layoff and it will take him a long time to get back, but he still has to prove himself, because I don't think he really won everybody over before his injury either. He scored some good goals, but the proof will be in the pudding. These 2 games are massive for us. We need to hit the ground running, and of course we need to try and make the Champions League, and it's on Dessers' shoulders.
that's the thing, is that the games are going to come thick and fast over the course of the first few weeks of the season. Whilst we're talking about strikers, there is an elephant in the room or on the pitch on Saturday. Will be wearing maroon, and that is Lauren Shankland. Now, the stories aren't going away anytime soon regarding Lauren Shankland, I think, until the window shuts. We were talking off air, Andrew, about the value to Hearts, even in his final year of contract, of Lauren Shankland staying there and scoring 30-odd goals again for them this season to propel them back into European football for next year. Is probably a lot more than getting £2 million for him just now, for him to leave. So I don't expect to see Shankland go unless it's on a pre-contract, maybe in January once he signs with someone. But I don't see it happening this summer unless a team comes in with silly money for him, and Rangers have not got silly money to go and spend on anyone, let alone a 29-year-old Lauren Shankland who they can get for free in 12 months' time.
I think for me, on a personal level, I think if Shankland doesn't come this window, then I think that's a transfer that should be put to bed. It's rumbled on for too long, and I still think at our level, that Europa League level, that Champions League level, I still personally think there's too many question marks over Lawrence Shankland. Do I think he's the man that would do it, the Sunday after a Thursday night in Europe or a Wednesday night in Europe, when you go to a St Johnstone or we go up to a Ross County? Absolutely, he makes a difference there. The games that we dropped points last season, stupid points that we shouldn't have been dropping, he's the guy that makes a difference. But for the output versus age, wage, and expectation on him, there's nothing to say that when he puts on the blue shirt, that weight of expectation doesn't also choke him at that level. And I think that's where I hold a lot of reservation on Lawrence Shankland. There is no doubt in the SPL, pound for pound, he is the best striker in the league. But at that elite level and that level that we should be aiming and aspiring for, which is knockout European football, I still think there's too many question marks on Lawrence Shankland as a player.
No, I think that's fair. Andrew, obviously speaking about Shankland, Hearts have done good business this summer with lots of new additions, not least Jan Danda coming in from Ross County, who I think is going to be a really useful signing for them in terms of trying to create a bit of firepower for Shankland, obviously, to score the goals for them. Very much expect them to be in the mix for third place again this year. We do expect Aberdeen to be better than they were last year. Probably not going to be difficult, but Jimmy Thielen, new to the league, hasn't really been able to bring in too many players as of yet, but you would expect they're going to be stronger. St Mirren are going to continue to be St Mirren. Difficult to beat at times, but where do you see Hearts being this year? Are they absolutely nailed on as the best of the rest again?
Well, looking at the transfers of the players they brought in, they've done some absolutely fantastic business. They've gone after some pretty decent utility men, names that you've known from the Scottish League, like Yadanda. That's a fantastic, I think, free transfer there. He was very good at Ross County. Players like Blair Spittle coming from Motherwell, I think that's a very good one, especially the age. I think, what is he, 27, 28? You're looking at players like Penrice, players like that. Obviously, pre-season hasn't been so good for Hearts. They have had some pretty bad results, but then so have we. Pre-season's all about fitness. It's hard to really get a picture sometimes of things because teams are trying different systems, different things. I think even bringing back players like Vargas, I think, is just fantastic. Bringing back to Scotland.
For them, I think.
I think, do you know what, with Hearts, I think that from their couple of years of experience in Europe as well, I think they'll look to go a step slightly further this year. Whether they can manage that and cope with that'll be the question. Because, going from Thursday nights to Sundays, it's not easy if you're not used to it, but they've had a couple of seasons of that. It's a difficult one to tell because, Aberdeen look like they're going with a nice kind of attacking philosophy. I probably would say Hearts for third. I probably would. They're always quite a consistent side for that, and the players they brought in, I think they've profited about $1 million from for their transfers. So, and they've not really spent too much. They've been very shrewd and very clever. They have lost a few players though. Obviously, Andy Halliday. He is 32 now, I guess, going down to Motherwell. Obviously, Alex Cochrane, a big one. Civic as well.
I think Tony Civic could be a really big loss for them. I think he was.
Defensively, I think the biggest issue over Hearts. But if they can get Craig Halkett fit again, that old kind of saying, it'll be like a new signing for them. So again, they've got options at the back, but they will absolutely fancy the game at the weekend. As I say, live on the TV, everyone watching. Rangers not coming in the greatest of places. And the one thing that this Rangers team, obviously slightly different personnel that's going to be on show, but they don't necessarily always react terribly well to adversity. And if Hearts can open the scoring first, then it could be a very tricky day at the office. But the one thing I think that gives us all a bit of hope and a bit of expectation, Mitch, is that Tynecastle as a venue has been a place that's been pretty good to Rangers over the course of the last few years, even when we've not been terribly great. Other places, Tynecastle's been a stadium that we've always done fairly well in, and the players are making all the right noises in terms of wanting to start the season in a positive light.
I also think as well it's worth putting a very sensible and measured head on things, because as we know, I try to kind of keep it reasonably mellow in that sense. Our pre-season in some ways is mildly synthetic to how it's been in previous, in terms of there has been games where we have played, at one point there against Birmingham, we played 17 youth players. We have tried to introduce the next generation to this level. And I think when you've got that period of experienced heads in and out the team, then you've got young players coming in hungry, raw, ready, players like Bailey Rice, players like Cole McKinnon, Archie Stevens has caught the eye, players like that who really want to lay a marker down to say, I deserve to be in this first team, whether that as a squad player or whether that be as a starter to come and take somebody's jersey. Because let's be honest, there are some jerseys up for grabs right now. And I think the pre-season, it's very easy to say the results were terrible and things never went our way and everything else, but actually we've broke a lot of young players into that environment of first team training. We've nursed players that have been away out on long-term injuries last season and spent more time in the doctor's table than sick note Steve. We've got guys that we've now managed to get a full season under their belts for the first time probably in years, in some guys' cases. And I think as a fan base, we're very, very guilty of over-analysing and get overly critical about every minor thing, like the Sterling thigh knock. Would we not rather he took a game out, a pre-season game that really has no merit or value to it, and then he doesn't miss the game against Hearts, and we give 60 minutes to James Tavernier, who's 2 weeks behind everybody else in pre-season because he got a hip injury fixed properly. I'd sooner see Tavernier get his hip injury fixed during the off-season than the start of pre-season. Then he breaks down at the start of September and then he's out for 6 months because his hip's goosed. I think it's very easy to look at the raw results and say the results weren't that great and some of the performances were abject and things. But, I look at Birmingham, for example. Conor Goldson travelled with the team, which I still don't think was necessarily the smartest idea. But he also then left the team, and it was a very young team that he left with a lot of youth players in there. It's very easy for those young players to become rattled by some of the situation around them. And I think now, as we get to the start of the season opener, I think that's where the experienced heads in the team take charge and help the players that are there right now and say, look, pre-season's been what it's been. Let's call it a glorified fitness session. The hard work starts today on Saturday, at the first kick of the ball.
Measured debates that'll never catch on, Mitch. We've got plenty of time between now and May to kind of assess and how we go. We've not even spoken about Todd Cantwell or Hampden, but that pretty much sees that we've run out of time on this one. big season for us here on the Fourth Official this year in terms of our coverage. Will be multi-platform for the first time, not only here on Patreon but also on our YouTube channel. And 1,400 of you have engaged with us over the course of the summer months, watching our bulletins and our videos, and we very much thank you for doing so. Plenty of coverage on that channel over the course of the season, from pre-match thoughts to quick analysis and synopsis from the games afterwards before you get your full match coverage here on Patreon, plus all the usual content when it comes to transfers, new signings, analysis, features. God, we've not even spoken about Hampden and the Ibrox redevelopment yet. So tons and tons of stuff coming your way this season, plus also much more coverage of the women's game this season as well. So be part of the new season here on the Fourth Official, and also we'll send a wee shout out to Andrew and the boys over at the Ibrox channel as well. So many fan media places doing great things this year, and loads of places where you can get not only Rangers content but Scottish football content as well. We will thank both the boys for joining us on this one. Very much
Thanks
looking
for having us.
forward to Saturday.
Yeah, thank you.
Win, lose or draw, we'll be here to assess how the season kicks off, and then all eyes will point to Poland and an absolutely crucial Champions League qualifier in midweek. We'll be here every step of the way. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll speak to you next time. Goodbye.